I decided to share this story, as horrible as it is. I believe it is a very important warning to the others who dumpster dive. I just started my usual day with a morning jog. I decided to make this one an especially long one after I had stuffed my face. With junk food and a bunch of cans of Spam, I had found dumpster diving and had hidden away in the back of my pantry in case of emergency, nuclear war, and such. I am a bit of the paranoid type. Anyways, I had started my jog down the sidewalk of a road by my neighborhood. It is a great area. Tall trees for shade, and a lot of other friendly joggers who ran along the same area as me. I was up early, so it was empty, and the sky was dim as the sun had barely started to rise. The jog was great for the first 15-20 minutes, when suddenly I got this sudden dread. Something is wrong, I thought. Sweat then started to leak profusely from my brows, stinging my eyes and overwhelming the headband I had on. Then a sharp aching knot formed in the pit of my stomach. It had felt like something was starting to claw its way out of my stomach. I slowed my pace to a brisk walk, thinking on where this pain could have come from. It was coming, I thought. I turned my walk into a run, clenching my hips, trying to hold back the beast that was to come. Aches took over my entire body. The pain just about threw me to the ground. But I couldn't stop. It was coming, I kept thinking. I couldn't help but try to run, panicking and looking for a way to ease this pain, to stop the monster that was about to burst from me. I was about to collapse when I saw a shelter ahead of me, left by the construction crew that had been working on the street the day before. A wide grin formed on my face at the seat away to finally stop this pain, a place I could hide my shame just steps before me. I stood in front of the door, almost tearing it off its plastic hinges. I slammed the door behind me, flipping the lock down to make sure no one could see the terror that was to come. I threw down my shorts, throwing myself onto the fiery hot seat. I clenched my teeth to the point of almost shattering. I felt the scorching pain from my insides finally being released. With the force of a raging river, my insides infected the blue sweet-smelling chemical pool underneath. I could only yell in relief. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The terror that had been convulsing in me had finished its job. I couldn't bear to look down at the monster that had finally been freed. I had been lost in my euphoria when I realized a warm, almost hot liquid running down my back. I cautiously reached around to touch it. I pulled my finger away, feeling the substance stick to it like a piece of chewing gum that had been out in the sun for too long. I tried to rid it off my finger, shaking it profusely, but it was stubborn. When I finally looked at the thing that had stuck to me, the color of it was as dark as the seat I was sitting on. Tar, I thought. Maybe it was left by the construction crew, that they somehow blasted some into the toilet by accident. But then the stench hit me. I gagged, immediately vomiting into the wicked concoction beneath me. Then I felt the back of my shirt slowly soak, covering my entire spine with a warm, almost hot sensation. I threw off my shirt, and when I did, it covered my hands in this wicked chemical that I had created. I tried wiping it all away with my shirt, but it just wouldn't come off. I reached for the paper underneath the hood of the toilet paper holder. I had felt only the surface of a hard, rough texture. Cardboard. I was screwed, done for. Then something caught my attention. From outside, there was a loud beeping sound, like the one you would hear from garbage trucks or delivery vans. It had to be the construction crew coming back to finish their work. Shit, I yelled in a panic. Loud knocking then started at the door, followed by a booming voice. Hey man, that's only for the construction crew. You better not have used all the toilet paper. In a moment of fear, I yelled, please, please, leave me alone. This guy is bombing our toilet. The smell is terrible. One of the men yelled. The one saving grace of a throne then became a throne of hostility, and then it became a twister. The men started to shake the toilet violently, all shouting into the toilet. You bombed our toilet, we bombed your ass. I had to make the choice between being drowned in my own stench or being shown to the world covered in the mess that I had created. I took a third choice. Please, guys, please. I had to do what I had to do. Leave me alone. The commotion stopped. We don't *K around with our toilets. Pal, a voice yelled. The door that was hiding my shame was suddenly torn right off its hinges, as if it were made of paper. There stood a giant of a man, a gut larger than me, and a coarse beard resting on top of it. Get the foo asterisk K out. Nasty foo asterisk K. Full of shame and feces, I slowly walked out of the toilet. Shirtless and with a pair of shorts that once had been gray, but were now the darkest shades of black and brown. What the hell, dude? What did you do to our potty? I heard in an angry voice. Please, guys, help me, I whimpered. In a sudden turn of empathy, I was given a spare shirt by one of the workers, but was left to my same crusted, dirty, and wet shorts. I asked them all for a ride back home to avoid the embarrassment, but all declined due to my disheveled, stinky state. I walked home defeated, full of shame, with my head hanging low and my crevice soiled. After I arrived home, I went to my backyard and threw my clothes into a trash bag that I had filled with leaves, hoping it would cover the foul smell. I grabbed the water hose and a bottle of bleach, then washed the stench off my back with it. After hours of washing myself off, I went back inside to dress myself and to see what I ate that could have caused my horrid situation. I picked the old cans of Spam that I had eaten out of the trash can and read the expiration date, September 1940. In my binge, I hadn't noticed it, nor noticed the taste of the meat that had been a sickly brown in the leftover portions that I found. So, to you all, as embarrassed as I am with this whole situation, I decided to type this out to warn those who dive for food. No matter how starved or broke you are, never, ever, please dumpster dive in the back of an auto. In the shadowed underbelly of revolutionary Paris, where the Seine choked on blood and the air reeked of unwashed bodies and fresh terror, executioner Antoine Leclerc had long ago ceased to see the guillotine as mere justice. By day, he was a dutiful servant of the Republic, his blade singing through the necks of counter-revolutionaries, aristocrats, and anyone the committee deemed insufficiently fervent. The heads tumbled into the wicker basket with wet thuds, eyes wide in final disbelief, jaws slack. But at night, when the crowds dispersed and the lanterns guttered low, Antoine would shoulder that same basket's contents, still warm, still leaking in, trudge through the rat-infested gutters of the Marais to his hovel. The place was a single room in a crumbling tenement, walls slick with mold, floorboards gnawed through by vermin that skittered boldly across his boots. No one questioned him. In those days, a man with the sans-culottes favor could claim his perquisites. He would bar the door, light a single tallow candle, and empty the basket onto the straw pallet that served as his bed. One by one, he would select the freshest headstones of the freshly severed, their necks still seeping in, press them to his groin. The throat holes were warm, pliant, the severed windpipes yielding like the softest flesh. He would thrust into them slowly at first, then with the frenzy of a man who had watched too many die, grunting as the rats watched from the corners, their eyes like black beads, blood and saliva mixed on his thighs. Sometimes a final twitch of the jaw would graze him like a lover's bite. He never spoke of it. The dead kept his secrets. One sweltering night in March 1794, the basket was heavier than usual. Hebert himself had gone under the blade that afternoon. Hebert, the Perdutian firebrand of the Commune, whose pamphlets had once whipped the mobs into frothing rage against the Girondins, and then against Danton himself. The tumbril had rolled through the bloodthirsty streets of Paris amid a howling crowd that chanted for more heads. Hebert, who had sent so many others to their deaths with gleeful words, had begun to crack as they approached the scaffold. His legendary defiance crumbled into wide-eyed animal terror. His legs shook violently as the executioners strapped him to the plank and slid his neck into the lunette. Antoine, savoring the moment, had toyed with the broken revolutionary. He positioned the blade and released it, but caught it just inches above Hebert's exposed neck. The crowd roared with delight at the cruel game. Hebert screamed, a high-pitched wail of pure panic. Antoine did it again and again. 3 times the heavy blade whistled down and stopped short, each near miss drawing louder cheers and laughter from the frenzied spectators. Make the bastard squirm. Perdutian pisses himself for the Republic. On the third fake drop, Hebert's terror became total. A dark stain spread across the front of his breeches as he pissed himself uncontrollably, urine streaming down his legs and pooling on the scaffold. Moments later, the stench of shit rose as his bowels voided in raw, humiliating fear. The crowd exploded in mocking cheers and jeers, pointing and howling at the once mighty orator, reduced to soiling himself like a child. Only on the fourth release did Antoine let the blade fall fully. It thundered down with a wet, decisive crunch, severing Hibbert-'s head cleanly. His head, with its wild black hair, matted in sweat, and the pockmarked face, still twisted in a rictus of terror and defiance, landed atop the pile like a crown. Antoine carried it home, as always, the rats in the alleys parting before him like a profane procession. In his hovel, he set the other heads aside they could wade in, lifted Hibbert-'s by the hair. The eyes were half-lidded, the mouth agape in a silent curse. The throat hole was perfect, raw, glistening, the vertebrae glinting white at the edges. Antoine's hands trembled as he freed himself. He had fucked kings and priests and whores of the old regime, but this was different. This was the voice of the revolution itself, reduced to meat. He pushed in deep, the severed esophagus stretching around him with a wet suck. The head bobbed in his grip as he rutted, harder, faster, the candle flame dancing across the dead man's face. Blood trickled down Antoine's legs. He imagined Hibbert-'s ghost watching from the rafters, impotent and furious. The rats chittered approval. When he finished, he collapsed beside the head, spent and strangely hollow, the throat hole now ruined and leaking. The door creaked open without a knock. His mother Marie stood there, once a prostitute in the Palais, now a broken woman of 40 who still painted her face like a corpse seeking customers. She had come looking for coin, as she often did, when her own trade dried up. Her eyes fell first on the basket, then on the head cradled in her son's lap, then on the evidence glistening on his skin. "Jean-René," she whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. Antoine blinked, still dazed. "What?" She staggered forward, fingers clawing at her own throat as if the blade had fallen on her instead. "He was your father. I never told you. He paid me well in '73, before the pamphlets, before the madness. Said the child would be a true sentence schooler. I birthed you in the gutter and let him forget. And now you've desecrated him like this." The words landed like the guillotine's drop. Antoine stared at the head, at the familiar sharp jaw, the same pockmarks that had always marked his own face beneath the grime. Hibbert-'s bastard. The realization clawed up his spine, cold and writhing. Marie screamed, and not in rage, but in a grief so absolute it sounded like laughter from hell. She fled into the night. The next morning, they found her hanging from the lamppost outside the conciergerie, a noose fashioned from her own petticoat. A note pinned to her breast read only, "The revolution eats its children, and their whores." Antoine did not weep. He dragged her body back to the hovel that same night, the rats scattering like applause. He laid her on the pallet beside Hibbert-'s head, which still sat on the floor where he had left it. With the same hands that had once wielded the blade, he took up his butcher's knife. He carved into her flesh methodically, slicing strips from thigh and breast, the meat still warm. He roasted none of it. He ate raw teeth, tearing, blood painting his chin as he chewed. The taste was iron and regret, and something like absolution. Outside, the rats feasted on what he left behind. Inside, Antoine, son of Hebert, executioner of the Republic, sat among the heads and the awful, smiling at last. The revolution, he understood now, had always been about consumption, and he had finally taken his rightful place at the table. The carnival came to town last week. All of my friends had been going, and of course, I was the one who just had to be grounded. It was like they wanted me to feel bad about it. Every day at school, I had to hear all about just how much fun they had. All the rides they went on after eating enough funnel cake and corn dogs to put them in a food coma. Who needs enemies when you have friends like that? That's the thing though. Not only did it make me angry at them, I was beginning to resent my parents. They hadn't just grounded me, they flat out refused to even grant me a single night of freedom, no matter how hard I begged. As the days passed and I kept hearing more and more about the carnival, I began to devise a plan. I knew that I'd only be in town for a week, and to miss the experience would be like missing Christmas to me. I didn't even have anyone to go with. I just did it. Snuck out one night, the last night I had left, after pretending to be bedridden all day. I didn't want any suspicion to be roused about why I was in bed at 8 o'clock. Unfortunately, after I had stuffed the pillows under my blanket and climbed out of my bedroom window, by the time I approached the carnival, things were already starting to wind down. People were leaving in droves. Couples had arms around each other, kids left with snacks in hand and smiles across their painted faces, all under the neon glow of my hopes crashing down before my very eyes. I checked my watch and saw that it was 8:45. I had 15 minutes left. I figured I could at least get 1 or 2 rides in before going home. But of course, the ride operators had already checked out for the day. They weren't about to just let some lone 14-year-old on a ride 15 minutes before closing time. Believe me, I tried. I just kept walking by my lonesome across the fairgrounds, stopping by the roller coasters one by one and getting the same rides closed for the night response. By 8:55, I knew that it was over. I missed my only chance over a stupid, flunked quiz, and now I was just gonna have to live with it. I kept telling myself, there's always next year, there's always next year, but deep down I knew just how far away next year really was. As I walked glumly past the snack stands and carnival games, I found myself slowing down for some reason. I wanted to just stay in that moment, I guess. Leaving meant accepting, and I just wasn't ready to accept. Every booth was empty, from the water guns all the way to the ring toss, and all that remained was the lingering scent of popcorn and fryer oil. Well, that and the smell of rain. I looked up and saw that I couldn't see the moon anymore, and low rumbles of thunder crashed across the cloudy night sky. As the lights from the booths began to shut down, one by one, I was left illuminated by the glow of one final attraction. My entire body turned purple and green, and I cocked my head up to read the sign above the entrance. House of Mirrors. Flashing white lights flickered around the outlines of the mirrors inside. The entrance remained open. The glow was calling my name. It pulled on my conscience, beckoning me. This is your one chance. Do it before you miss it. Don't think, just move. The clap of the thundercloud overhead and the drops of rain falling to the ground around me were enough to spring me into action. I ran through the entrance of the maze and almost immediately smacked my face against one of the mirrors. Rubbing away the disorientation, I started feeling around the hall, bumping into myself periodically. I kept walking deeper and deeper into the maze, and before I knew it, I could no longer see the entrance. I kept going. The mirrors warped my face and body, and usually I'd have laughed, but the weather outside sounded like it had really picked up, and I was beginning to regret my decision to sneak out. The rain hitting the roof sounded less like rain and more like rocks being dropped from the sky. As I eased deeper into the heart of the maze, I noticed something. One of my reflections was missing. It was just an empty pane of glass, but it wasn't empty. It was still reflecting the surrounding mirrors, but I wasn't in any of them. It was just an infinite, looped void of mirrors. I heard giggling laughter coming from deeper within the maze, and the further I walked in its direction, the more and more reflections started disappearing. I could have sworn every time one disappeared, a new one would flash in its place before disappearing again. The laughter of other children filled my ears, and it sounded like they were surrounding me, but I knew I was completely alone. I reached the end of a long hallway, and only one reflection remained, right in front of me, but it wasn't mine. It was just some random kid who looked about my age. With each step I took, he mimicked my movements. I waved my hand, he did the same. I spun in a circle, he did the same. The only difference was, I know I looked terrified. This kid was just staring at me, smiling as wide as his mouth allowed. I took one final step and found myself face to face with the kid. He stuck his hand to the glass, and I did the same. We stared at each other for a moment, studying one another. Without warning, he took his hand off the glass and curled it into a fist. He drew back, and with all the strength he could muster, he hammered that fist against the glass. In that very moment, I felt static electricity fill the air as thunder boomed above us and the lights went out around me. I found myself alone in pitch darkness, except I wasn't alone. I could hear them again, the snarling giggles of children from every direction, the skittering of footsteps surrounding me. But it wasn't about what I could hear, It was about what I could feel. It felt like I was being jerked around from all angles. These things pulled on my feet, yanked on my arms and clothes. It sounded like they were fighting over me. Their laughter was being replaced with growls, and the grasp from each hand kept getting tighter and tighter. Nails tore into my flesh. Teeth sank into my arms and legs. It burned worse than hell itself, and all I could do was scream. Fighting was pointless. It seemed like there were literally dozens of these things. In the midst of the chaos, I felt a cold hand grip the nape of my neck before dragging me forward with inhuman strength at an inhuman speed. I felt my skin pull against the hard floor as it dragged me further and further until I collided with what felt like a brick wall. That's all I remember before my own lights went out. I didn't wake up until, I'm assuming, the next day. The lights around the mirrors had come back. The room was completely lit again, and down in front of me, I saw him. The boy from the reflection. I tried to take a step to grab him, but was stopped by a panel of glass in front of me. I stuck my hand to it as the boy smirked at me and did the same. I could see the mischief in his eyes. I was living on the receiving end of a gotcha moment, and all I could do was slam my fist against the glass. I screamed as loud as I could, hammered at the glass with my feet and hands, and all the boy did was smile at me, backing away slowly. I felt the tears welling up in my eyes, partly from the pain in my fists, but mostly from the fear in my chest. I punched the glass one last time as the first teardrop fell down my cheek. The boy turned his back to me. All I could do was watch as he walked back towards the entrance and disappeared into the maze. I'm writing this now because I need someone to read this. Please, if you are, I'm begging you. You have to save me. I can't be trapped here forever like the rest of them.